Anjan, you're going to have to forgive me, but I want to push you a little bit and into speculation, which normally scientists don't like to be pushed, but I like to push. So, in studying the arts, you have been one of the world's leaders in studying the neuroaesthetics. So, what happens in the brain during the production and experience of artistic experiences. Can that in any way help us or provide any additional nuanced information that deals with the classic chestnut of the mind-body problem? What is the relationship between the mind and the brain? Is there something non-physical about this system? Is there anything religious involved? What kinds of data and experiences and writing 2 books on neuroaesthetics and the aesthetic brain can you bring to this question?
Most scientists, as you point out, don't like to speculate, and certainly not on camera. But this notion that there is a distinction between the mind and the brain, one might think of those as just different levels of description. And that, to use a term that philosophers often use, that one supervenes on the other, that there is a way in which whatever we have to say about the mind can't contradict what we know about the brain. And so there's a mutual constraint going on there. But it might be the case that if you know everything about the brain, you will not have learned everything about the mind.
Well, there's a very important distinction. Supervening is a technical term, but it basically puts more of a primary emphasis on what is supervened on. So the thing that's on, the thing that's supervening on, the on thing is the more fundamental thing.
Yeah, so to get more specifically into the question you're asking about, there is a notion that is somewhat popular in neuroscience now of the way in which experiences are embodied, right? That there is this notion that it's not just a computer, but that the way our mind is organized is informed by the physical structure of our body. And with respect to aesthetics, an example of that would be an experiment we're doing right now, which is if you compare Pollocks and Mondrians, and Pollocks are sometimes referred to as action paintings. They're splatters, they're very dynamic. There's a kind of structure to them, but it's not obvious to the uninitiated where that structure is coming from. Mondrians tend to be vertical and horizontal lines. They're very precise. They use primary colors in a way that is very ordered. We ask the question, is it the case that the experience of Pollocks is embodied in our motor systems, right? And so how one might ask that question, as a neurologist, we in our toolkit is looking at individuals with various kinds of neurologic disease. So right now we're looking at people with Parkinson's disease, and Parkinson's disease, as you know, affects our motor systems, that people tend to be slow. To ask the question, do people with Parkinson's disease experience these paintings differently, right? And that's a way of trying to compress this distinction between the mind and the body to say that here's an aesthetic experience which we think is a mind experience, but is cashed out in physical properties of our body, and in the relationship of how our brain organizes and controls these physical aspects of our body.
Is there any purchase to be had in distinguishing between the human production of art and what seems to be its absence throughout the rest of the animal kingdom?
Yeah, I guess I would push back on the term absence because it suggests a dichotomy, right? There's art and there's this. So certainly people have talked about the way in which birds, the classic example is the bowerbird that has this very elaborate, almost artistic and decorative nests. The
difference would be that would be something static. We're interpreting as artistic because we like the colors and the design, but that it's static and it has a clear behavioral mating or whatever the function may be in that case. And so I could push back on that and saying that, our interpretation that that's art, but it's not art to the bird, it's art to us.
Well, our interpretation of art also changes over time, right? Up until, I mean, you would need a bona fide art historian to flesh this out, but my understanding is it's only been the last 300 or 400 years that we've really thought of art qua art, right? That it's the same sort of, the artifacts were used very ritualistically, embedded in a kind of culture, and all of a sudden now we have a museum culture or a gallery culture where you go and look at something, say an African mask that was embedded in a kind of behavior. So we may not be that different than birds.